Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Andriy Shevchenko. On behalf of the Mediacentru Ukraine, I welcome all the journalists telling the world about our battle for freedom. Today we'll be discussing the organization of the schooling process in wartime. Mediacentru Ukraine is watching this topic because we consider this one of the priorities of national security. We'll be discussing this with Oleh Paska, Director of the Education and Science Department of the Lviv Oblast Minister Administration. Pane Oleh, it's been 1 month of the school year since, in the conditions of Russia's invasion and Russian aggression. What conclusions can we draw so far? Thank you. Education in the Lviv region, much like in the country in general, education has taken the challenge, has faced the challenge. Out of the 1,100 schools, 700 are doing their schooling in process. About 300 are mixed, and the rest are distant learning, online learning. There are these are about 30 schools. The schools that already had shelters were simply refurbished, taken care of. Some communities had to build new shelters. Others were looking for nearby shelters or for premises that could be used as nearby shelters. And in this way, they managed to ensure the kind of schooling we have today. The next challenge is the heating season, not because we are unused to preparing for winter or for the heating season, but because we don't know what the enemy might do from one day to the next, and will we have energy supplies or not, which is why we're preparing to face this challenge. As far as teachers are concerned, teachers and students who have gone abroad, who have moved abroad, recall that 30,000 students left the Lviv region abroad, and over 1,000 teachers also, which means basically 80,000. By now, 80% of the teachers have returned. We have about 280 teachers abroad, and more than half the students have also returned to the Lviv Oblast for schooling, out of those who had left. So this means that we have about almost 15,000 students abroad today. About 7,000 students in our schools come from the internally displaced, and people of the number of the internally displaced. So we have 281,000 students and 32,000 teachers. If we look at the numbers, the Lviv Oblast seems to have a much higher percentage of schools that provide offline schooling for kids. We were discussing this yesterday, and we have the all Ukrainian statistics where about 2/3 of Ukrainian schools provide the opportunity to study in person. The reason that this worked out better in the Lviv Oblast, are there any conclusions that we could, that other regions might make use of? From what we've seen in our tour of the communities, there's pretty good. The schools work well in places where the entire community understands the problem, that there is a problem that it needs solving. We've had examples when a school didn't have a shelter, but the community, the parents, the teachers would come together and resolve this question. They would simply build a shelter over the summer, and it would be done properly. So a lot depends on how consolidated the community is, and to what extent we have the understanding that the students get better results studying in person. We've had examples. Of communities that they had old anti-radiation shelters, and they told us that they probably won't have the opportunity to study in person. After we spoke to them in greater detail, we showed them the opportunities of this shelter, that they simply needed to bring it to some working order and sanitary order. They also started in-person learning. It depended on the mood, on on whether or not there were some sort of reservations, whether the parents or the teachers had some sort of reservations from the communication between the parents, the teachers, and the community. A lot depended on that. The responses we've had from the parents, from the kids, from the teachers, what are the bottlenecks? What are the biggest challenges, apart from the winter that you already mentioned, the coming winter? The biggest challenge clearly is are the challenges that the same challenges we had in peacetime, the reform of the schooling system. In my opinion, we in the nearest 2 years we have to work with curricula, particularly the sciences curricula, physics, chemistry, biology, as well as math, in order to make them um, stimulating for the children and bring them to some sort of order, consistency. Because what we have now and how it's constructed now, because of the reforms, it's not always because the branches are not always properly planned from previous years. It often children often have a distaste for it rather than an interest for it. For instance, our physics teachers have submitted a curriculum for the 7th to 9th grade, a physics curriculum, and we hope that that will be adopted soon. Um, Additionally, as far as the content of the curricula is concerned, this has to be the biggest point of work for the entire branch, apart from the fact that we're living in wartime. Because if we want our country to be a technological country, an educated country, we need to pay attention to the sciences, to the STEM field. This is something that was left behind since 1990. How are the air raid alarms working? Obviously, we've had the experience of stopping classes now. What does it mean for the teacher? How are they supposed to? How are they supposed to differently organize their work in these conditions? First of all, it's a lot of attention to the kids and their needs, so that the kids minimize the stress that they are getting. We're also putting in place the psychological services, the school psychologists from the entire from our institute and all the way to the individual schools. Psychologists do trainings. They've been getting them previously, but now this is very specifically tailored to the conditions in which we're living. We're using the experience of Israeli psychologists. They also lead trainings for our psychologists and teach them how to work with teachers and the kids in order to create a comfortable atmosphere in every school. If we switch to after school learning, previously, last time you stressed that there will probably be a great stress for the after school institutions. How has this come true, and what do we see today? Well, first of all, yes, these institutions are working, and this gave the opportunity for the kids to distract the kids from the situation, to decrease stress, and these after school institutions are working very hard. And over the next period, over October, November, the education department, uh, we're planning to develop further this after school learning. We will submit changes, we'll propose changes for the development of education for next year. Universities, colleges, how's the stress there? And how's the system dealing with the stress? It seems, I don't know if I'll hit bullseye here. We'll see this on November 1st. But it seems that the Lviv region might again become number one in Ukraine in terms of student enrollment in professional technical schools. We're seeing this for the third year in a row, and some professions where we have more interest than there are places, or than there is regional demand. And obviously now there are institutions where there's a significant competition. We have professional technical institutions where there is significant competition for the children to enroll. This means that the quality of professional technical education is growing, and as well as the demand for those professions is growing. The professions, what professions are those? Well, first of all, we've opened a new specialty. Children are learning drone management, or flying drones, and we've had this decision. This is a serious challenge. We're also working on introduce several new professions. This, of course, it means changing the curricula, changing existing curricula or developing new curricula. Our center is working on that. So we're hoping that it's not only those professions, but also other professions will see significant interest. What numbers are we talking about? The numbers of people in higher learning, institutions of higher learning, we can talk about kids, students previously always had about, give me a minute. We had we had about 20,000 students, so about 5,000 new students enrolling per year. This year we've had 8,000 students. So the stress of for dormitories and campus learning is so it's about 60%. Yeah. So what does it mean practically? Practically, it means that the institutions of higher learning, we understand that the situation is pushing us that way. I mean, we always had Kharkiv number 2 after Kyiv, and then Lviv was number 3 in terms of students coming in. Because in Kharkiv, the security situation is, we know what it's like. Lviv is now finds itself in second place in terms of new students, in terms of enrollment. And the question is, we're very worried whether our higher institutions of higher learning will manage this challenge. In order to be attractive, they have to raise the quality of their services and the quality of their work with students. If we have questions in the room, please let it be known. If not, my last question for you is: what are the what are the moods now? How are the teachers feeling? How are they dealing with the current conditions? Well, because we are all citizens of our country, then the mood is the same as in the army. We will teach, we will work, we will improve our work, we will help the armed forces, and we will help the IDPs. As we've been doing, as we are doing, and as we'll continue to do for Ukraine to win this war. Oleh Paska, Lviv Oblast Military Administration, thank you very much for this conversation. Please watch our announcements